Okay, welcome back, everybody. Make sure I'm recording. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Um, let's see where we're at. First things first, I want to say, okay, welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone's doing all right. I want to start off by saying we are picking up on chapter 9 today. Even though I know this is technically a week behind where we're actually at. I know today's the 8th, so we're actually in this week. But today I'll be posting chapter 9's lecture for entrepreneurial channel development and supply chain management. I just want to remind everyone the entrepreneurial exercise for this chapter is going to be due this Sunday at midnight or 11:59 p.m. So we still have 4.5 days pretty much to get this assignment in. So everyone make sure that they get this in. And then I will be getting this lecture posted no later than probably Monday of next week. I'll be getting this one up because we're playing a little catch up right now still, but I want to get this posted. I might even get it up over the weekend. So be on the lookout for this lecture as well. So that way we're back on our regular actual schedule going into the next week. Getting into chapter 11, and as you can see, that right there will get us into our lab week. So we actually have an open week still, to where we're not going to be, I'm planning on not covering any material, to where we'll be just working on that entrepreneurial marketing plan, that which of course is that course project that's going to be due the following week right here, the entrepreneurial marketing plan. So that's what my hopes is, to stay on this plan that we have here, even though like I said, we're kind of lagging behind with me just now getting chapters 9 lectures up today. So, like I said, just be on the lookout for this other lecture, and remember that this entrepreneur exercise will be due this Sunday, coming up at 11:59 p.m. Also, am talking about the entrepreneur marketing plan. Everyone should be about say 60 to 70% done now, if not further. As you should be working on this as we move through this material, and that's why I speak about this every time that we have a lecture, almost about getting this assignment, and not getting it moving, but keeping it moving, and staying on track with this course project. So make sure you're staying on this marketing plan, and as always, I'm here if you need me to help you with any section of that plan. So let's go ahead and get into chapter 9 now. So once again, chapter 9 is covering entrepreneurial channel development and supply chain management. So a little introduction to the chapter. If you've read the chapter yet, there's a frozen pie example. Pretty much, long story short, it's a lady who was a baker, and she baked a certain pie, and she was hoping to get her pie to be distributed by major supermarkets. Well, she had went ahead and did all of her feasibility plan and everything, and had everything she thought ready to roll. But she didn't realize, when she actually went to get her spot within these huge supermarkets for starting to distribute her product, that there was actually a slotting fee to be able to actually even have that slot space from that wholesaler, or that supermarket. So so in turn, she had to either raise her prices, as we can see here, or just had to go about approaching the whole entire engagement with them in another way. So that just that one variable there of not knowing that there'd be a slotting fee completely threw off all of her gross profit margins that she had expected to receive on each sale, and therefore obviously changed the whole scope of her operations, and the whole entire financial aspect of her business. So that just goes to show you the importance of truly doing your homework before you actually get rolling in the real time with your actual product or service once you bring it to market. And this also points out, I want to point out something. I know I've mentioned this numerous times throughout the semester, it all comes down to that she underpriced her product as it was. If she couldn't have took the hit for the slotting fee, depending on how large of a slotting fee that is, obviously. But like I said before, a lot of times early entrepreneurs and young business people tend to undervalue their goods or service that they're selling, and don't put as much of a price on it as they should. Therefore, selling themselves short and ultimately getting a slower ultimate return on your product or service, or a break even point, whichever way you want to look at it, from other material that we've covered previously in this course. So like I said before, always price yourself right enough to be able to cover your cost. Good example here with that frozen pie example. What ended up happening is she actually knew somebody, and she started getting her pie within a smaller supermarket, and ended up carrying her pie and distributing it, and it was more for like a specialty or upper end type of goods. So just an interesting story there to open the chapter up with. Next, with the channel development, that's obviously reaching your target customers with your products and services, either directly or indirectly, or it could be both. um, your channel must be able to achieve the following goals. We ultimately want to reach our target market. Obviously, that's our whole goal from the very beginning, as we've been talking about reaching our target market. Um, but the right thing, or the key to this, is having the right product or service, and having it at the right place, the right time, and ultimately at the right price. So all these factors have to be brought together to be able to achieve the goals of having the channel operating efficiently. You may have to make trade-offs between channel effectiveness, market coverage, and cost profitability. Ensure that your channel will drive sales growth and deliver customer value. So obviously, we want to be able to make sure that the way that our channel is operating, it leaves us room to grow, but also leaving the customer some value, so that they're perceived as getting some money, some extra money in their pockets, and ultimately it's a win-win for both sides. So ultimately, that's going to enable your venture to grow. Your job is to determine the best way to get your products or services to your customers while achieving profitable sales levels. We want to understand the channels. So you learn about the 5 P's and the 8 P's of product service based marketing earlier in this course. Well, place is obviously one of the 8 P's and one of the 5 P's that we just mentioned in the first bullet point. And obviously, like I said, if it's mentioned in both of these. This means getting our product or service to your target market, right? So what place is this transaction taking place? Is it going to be on online format? Is it going to be the old brick and mortar type of format? Distribution channel is going to refer to the organizations and individuals that are involved in the process of getting the products or services that you produce to your customers. So pretty much what this is saying, from the very beginning of the process, from the raw materials or whatever it might be, if we're in a manufacturing firm, for where do we get our lumber, if we make treated lumber, or 2x4s and 4x4s. If we're in the steel industry, or we build steel beams, where do we buy our steel from, all the way from that until ultimately who do we sell that steel to, for the contractors, for the steel, for that example. So how do we manage that whole process from the very beginning to the end? So once again, the distribution channel is like from the very beginning to the very end, from the very start of the process to the ending. We do have different channel options. They're going to be mainly 3 channel options that we're primarily concerned with here. They are direct, indirect, and multi-channel. Obviously, multi-channel is going to be tying the direct and indirect together, so it's going to be kind of a hybrid option there. We'll be getting into each one of these in more detail in a little bit. Preference should be given to direct distribution. This is so because it allows you to assume the most control over your goods or services that you're actually offering. Which makes sense, obviously, if we're directly distributing what we have to sell, or what we have to offer, then we're dealing directly with that customer, that consumer. So Obviously there's going to be a lot of benefits derived from dealing directly with the customer. Obviously they get to see you firsthand, so they get the face, of what the company is, so they actually get to see you, they get to deal with you, you get to know them more intimately, as far as know what their preferences are. You can make sure you're following up with that post sale. So there's a lot of good things that can come about dealing directly with your customers, as far as on the transaction part of the concern here. Do not add channel members until you're aware of everything it entails to sell your product directly. Obviously, we're not going to want to go about picking up channel members, whether it be on the on the back end or the front end of that channel. Obviously, because we don't want to go and get someone to maybe perform a step that we could have in-housed and done with our own workforce that we already have on the payroll. So therefore, cutting out another external cost that's really unnecessary. So we really don't want to go about adding these channel members until we're aware of everything it entails to sell our product directly, because we're going to learn a lot from that process, going through it directly and actually interacting with the customer. Because we'll see later in the lecture that some customers would prefer to actually transact directly, and some might prefer an indirect method or multi-channel. You'll see. So there's preferences between both that of the enterprise and that of the actual consumer. So it's interesting once we get through this on how this all comes together. If you do not have the knowledge or expertise to support a direct distribution channel, then you should ultimately consider an indirect or a multi-channel. You'll see that the knowledge or expertise to support a direct distribution channel is a little more sophisticated than meets the eye. So there's a lot that comes to the timing and the pricing and just the cost of everything that entails this whole entire process. And another thing is the actual cost of it. It tends to be kind of costly to run the direct distribution channel. We'll start with the direct channel. With the direct distribution, you will not use any intermediary. Obviously, if we're directly dealing with the consumer or the customer, then there's not going to be an intermediary. You're going to sell directly, not necessarily through a retail location. Some options are going to be a sales force. So you can actually have a sales force of people. These could be people that are actually, say, if you just have your products on a shelf within a brick and mortar, then you'll have a sales force obviously working the floor within that brick and mortar building. If you have maybe you just have a corporate building and then you have an external sales force, to where you have a fleet of vehicles and you have people that go out on the road, so they're running, and then they just have different geographic areas that they cover. So obviously you can see that would be costly, because you have the cost of all the fuel expenses and the upkeep on the cars and the maintenance on those. You would have the cost of leasing those vehicles or purchasing them. So you can see how this adds up very quickly, and on top of actually paying the employee on top of all that. So you can see a cost add up quick. So that's an option, having the sales force. The telemarketing, obviously, that's involved more of like a call center. You could also have a mail or a catalog order, or online, which is obviously becoming your most prominent and most active probably of these is the online format, as technologies become more available and more advanced, and also more cost effective. The prices decreased as technology becomes more available. Some more on direct channel distribution. You retain ownership of your product or service, and also by retaining ownership of this product or service, it's awesome, because obviously you don't have to give any of those rights away. But with retaining those rights, you also assume the actual obligations that comes along with having those rights. So you're going to also have to be responsible for the actual sales of that product or service. So no one else is going to actually sell something that you're actually 100% responsible for. So you're going to be responsible for moving that product or service. You're also going to be responsible for distributing it. So once that actual sale's been made, once you've actually come to an agreement upon terms, how are you going to actually distribute that good or service? So that's another factor you have to consider. Is it going to be, are you going to use an actual common carrier like your United Postal Service or your FedEx, or you can actually have your own fleet of vehicles to actually distribute it? So how are you going to go about distributing your product? Your customer service, because remember, you want to go beyond the sale and service these products or services, especially if you're selling a unit that's been installed that requires maintenance. How is your customer service center going to be set up? Collection of payment from customers. So that's another thing that really becomes of relevance here, because a lot of times businesses operate on credit, like revolving credit lines with financial institutions. It's based upon on your accounts receivable and your inventory of a company a lot of times, because those are most companies your two most prominent assets that can make or break a company. So if the collection of payment from customers, obviously AR being a very critical asset, you have to be able to manage that. So that's a pretty significant asset that you have to manage there. And I mean, there's a whole aging process that comes along with that as well, and also uncollectible process for bad debt expense that ties in that as well. So that's another thing that can get very sophisticated within keeping up with the collection of payments from customers. So all these things are things that need to be taken into consideration for the entrepreneur when determining what type of channel they want to develop when going about distributing their goods and services. A little more on direct channel. Direct distribution is going to allow you a large degree of control over customer interaction. Obviously, if you're dealing directly with them, you're gonna have this face-to-face interaction and get to know them at a much better level. It can be expensive. Obviously, hiring direct sales force is rather costly. We've already touched a little bit in that on the slide previously. Um, Electronic or online marketing is growing in popularity as many ventures operate solely in the virtual market to achieve lower sales and distribution costs. Obviously, we see this growing in popularity. Everyone's familiar with Facebook and all these online social sites, and all these online like marketplaces that like eBay and all these things we see online, how popular they are. Amazon. So obviously we see that online marketing growing and very popular. And I'm sure everyone sees, speaking of Facebook, when they get on there, especially here in the last couple of years, you can tell the increased volume of actual advertisements on there. You can obviously that's proof that this online marketing and advertising is growing in popularity, because obviously Facebook's obtaining a lot of revenue from these companies to allow them to put their advertisements on that actual live news feed that where everyone's actually, all the eyes are on today's generation. So everyone needs to take advantage of that trend of your social technology. So never forget to use those platforms like your Twitter and your Facebook and those type of accounts. A growing trend in the direct channel is the idea of disintermediation. This is the process of removing or bypassing intermediaries. This is so the venture can deal directly with the customer. This is obviously the reason behind this is going to be to reduce channel cost and maintain greater control. So obviously, this is all tying into that original notion of the direct channel, all those benefits that come along with it. But remember, all those costs are the obligations of maintaining those benefits. Are also very high as well. So that's something, that cost benefit analysis needs to be taken into account here when dealing with this direct channel. Next is the indirect channel. Obviously, there's going to be some intermediaries here. Um, they're going to be positioned between you and your target customers. So we're going to use like either agents, brokers, dealers, as we can see here on some indirect channels, what they include, wholesalers, retailers. So I think everyone's probably familiar with dealing with each one of these. Maybe on for some stocks, maybe some of you all trade some stocks, and you have some brokers that you deal with firsthand. Maybe some of you all drink a certain type of beer and you can't find it in a local market and or a marketplace or super center wherever you do your local shopping. So maybe you get in touch with an actual local beer distributor and actually purchase your beer from them. Same thing. A lot of people go to retailers. I'm sure you have your favorite retailer to go and do your shopping for whatever type of apparel you like to wear. So everyone at this point in their life is probably had some interaction with these different type of agents or brokers or dealers or whatever these intermediaries are. If you're working with more than one intermediary, then it is considered a multi-tiered channel. So obviously, if you're dealing with maybe brokers and then wholesalers at the same time, then you'd be considered a multi-tiered channel. Channel members can take control of ownership. So obviously, if if you're dealing with a broker, then they're probably going to charge you a fee. So a percentage of whatever your ownership is going to therefore be forfeited, usually on a per transaction basis. So for every transaction, they're going to take a percentage of what you own, or what that deal on that deal. A lot of times, if a lot of times companies will place goods on consignment with, say if someone is a wholesaler or maybe a manufacturer. Let's say someone's just a manufacturer and they'll consign goods to a retailer. A lot of times the retailers are gonna take an actual percentage, for a selling percentage fee, for actually holding that merchandise and selling it for that manufacturer. So just different ways these different multi-tiered channels work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just a certain type. So certain elements tying in to a certain tied formula. There can be different elements tying into it. So what I mean is, it doesn't necessarily just have to be only dealers dealing with wholesalers. It could be agents, dealers, distributors. It could be all of them within a sorry, my head just went blank, within a sophisticated multi-tiered channel, I guess you could say, if you have a lot of different intermediaries positioned between you and your target customer on both the front end and back end of this channel. Okay, multi-channel is going to utilize both the direct and indirect methods. Some good examples of this is the companies of Avon, which is going to be your makeup company. Hallmark, I think everyone's familiar with Hallmark with their cards from around all the Hallmark holidays, around Valentine's Day, Christmas, birthdays. So Hallmark is known for having classic cards. And then the Three Dog Bakery, remember we talked about them earlier in the semester as well. So what are some channel drivers? Several drivers are going to actually affect the channel alternatives. These drivers are going to include the customer, the product, the environment, and the venture itself. So all four of these drivers are going to affect your channel alternatives. So meaning, like, what channel are you going to choose? Your indirect or direct. Some customers, as I said before, are going to prefer to deal with maybe indirect approaches. So they'd rather go to a retailer or something as opposed to dealing directly with a manufacturer. Some might prefer dealing directly with manufacturer in hopes of getting a better cost or being able to get a bigger bulk of a purchase, because maybe the retailer just can't actually handle that type of a purchase because they don't actually have that much of the merchandise on hand. Obviously, the product's going to influence it. If you're selling a software, then obviously that's something that can be done via online. Whereas if you're selling heavy duty equipment, obviously then that's something that the transaction could occur online, but obviously then the product is going to affect the channel on how you distribute that product once the sale's been made. The environment's going to affect it ultimately, and that could be the economic environment, the political environment, whatever it might be. The venture itself, obviously, whatever the venture is gonna affect the channel as well. So if you're offering professional services, obviously, whereas your legal services or accounting services, that's something once again that could ultimately be done online for the most part. Whereas if you're conducting services, construction services, if you're a general contractor, then obviously that's something that cannot be done online. That's obviously they have to be at the actual physical plot of land, constructing the actual fixed asset. The customers will likely support an indirect channel. Answering the following questions about the customer may help you identify the best channel choice. So, who are the potential customers? Where do they buy? When do they buy? And how do they buy? So, this is something we've seen. So, this is nothing new here about the when do they buy, where do they buy, and how do they buy. So, remember, that voice of the consumer is that one of the most valuable pieces we have on determining if the venture is going to even be a success or not from the beginning and the development of our products. So obviously, these knowing these questions about the customer is obviously gonna help us choose the best channel. A little more on the product or service. Direct distribution. Usually, highly sophisticated products are going to be more directly distributed. This makes sense because with them being highly sophisticated, then a lot of times there needs to be that direct channel of communication so that there's no misunderstanding of what the good or service entails. Understanding the products, obviously, that needs to be there, and the product of high unit value. So obviously, if you're dealing with something that's very expensive, then obviously like a specific identification of a product because of it, the value of it here is obviously going to be more likely to be directly distributed, because once again you want to make sure you protect that asset until you've changed ownership of it, therefore making sure all your obligations have been fulfilled. Indirect distribution, obviously, if highly sophisticated products are more likely to be directly distributed, then the unsophisticated products are more likely to be indirectly distributed. These are going to also include standardized products and products of more of a lower unit value. Channel drivers, continued. The product life cycle is also going to tie into the consideration of the channel choice. The products or services in their early stages of the life cycle should most likely use the direct channels, obviously, because if you're early in the life cycle, you want to maintain the most control, and you really don't want to incur additional costs to try to have other people sell your stuff, because you ultimately are going to need all of that return on your product to keep your business as a going concern. Products or services in more mature stages may expand distribution through indirect channels. So obviously, as you get your venture more established and maybe start getting into different segments, different industry segments, or different industries or different market segments, you might have start offering different products for those different market segments or different industries. So therefore you might start using some indirect channels for distributing those goods or services, because it would just make sense, because your volume's increasing, so therefore you don't need so much of the control of it. You're in more of a position within your company as a whole. Both your financial position and your performance is allowing you at that point to be able to take a less of actual profit per unit, and allow you to expand into that indirect channel. The environment's also another variable that needs to be considered. Technology has changed the way many businesses operate. I think this can be seen most large corporations today, and even I would say most of your smaller businesses but probably have a Facebook page by now, or some type of online advertisement at this point. The internet created a new channel opportunity for entrepreneurs. Obviously, I say the biggest entrepreneur you could look at really would be Jeff Bezos with Amazon. He left a really good financial job that he had. I believe he was in New York. Had a really good job in finance, and mid '90s decided he was gonna move to Washington State over in Seattle and sell books on the internet, and you know in turn found out he could pretty much sell anything on that platform, and now look what Amazon's turned into. So I think, like I said, Jeff Bezos and his company Amazon that he founded is a great example there for how technologies has really changed things. And obviously, Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook's another example as well. um, so the venture itself is also a driver of channel alternatives. Some aspects of the venture that affect the choice are going to be the finances, obviously. How expensive is it to operate within that actual channel? The human capital. Do you actually have the human capital, or can you afford to actually bring on the human capital that's required? And do you actually have the technological capabilities to be able to operate within the channel that you want to? So obviously, if you don't have the technological capabilities, you're not going to be able to run an online or operate within the online marketplace, because if you're not technological equipped, then that's going to be an issue. So all of these are going to be some aspects of the venture that are ultimately going to affect the choice. So choosing a channel strategy. An entrepreneur must consider the following criteria when choosing a channel strategy: the effectiveness, the market coverage, the cost efficiency and profitability, and the adaptability. So let's go ahead and get in with the effectiveness first. So, which channel is most effective in satisfying the buying needs of the target customer? Um, Good way to go about trying to accomplish this question is to ask these individual questions. How do the customers like to buy? So, what are their preferences? Are they comfortable buying online? Do they trust the process? Are they more comfortable buying in a brick and mortar type process? Are they indifferent, or does it not really matter to them, either or? Um, a lot of times, this is goes to show how actual demographics can come into to play here. Usually, the older generations are more hesitant to want to shop online, because they're just not as apt to using the technology, and they just don't trust it as much as the younger generations do, because we kind of grew up with it, so it's just kind of first nature to us. Whereas it's they're just not that familiar with it. So how do customers like to buy? Do they prefer to buy directly from you? Once again, would they rather buy directly from you, or would they rather buy from an intermediary, whether it be a wholesaler or a retailer or a distributor or whatever it might be? Do they mind going through a channel member? So all these things are gonna come into play here. Um, Requirements that should also be considered: desire for information. Customers require product or service information. Obviously, if you buy a good or service, you want to know what to expect out of it, and obviously, so when you buy something, it should give you some general instructions of how to care for that product, or how to service it over its expected useful life. Channel members can assist by using in store displays, demonstrations, personal selling. We can see this from um, like these retailers like American Eagle, for example, with those little mannequins. They'll dress them in some of the most current apparel, for, like, say, for example, for the classic fall apparel. They might, for when kids are going back to school, they'll dress those mannequins up. So that's an example of an in store display. Um, and personal selling, they might have someone in there personally trying to sell you the item, and in part doing demonstrations as well. So I guess in a way, kind of a hybrid approach there. So demand for convenience, close proximity, or little driving time to access your products or services. So how close is it? So a lot of times people choose which supermarkets they shop at, or what gas stations they get gas from, because of the convenience of where it's located. Um, Obviously, so that ties into to the convenience of our society. We're time stricken, or time time is of the essence for us. Everything is just go 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 go. So that's the demand for convenience. It's high with today's society and environment. The need for variety. Customers want numerous competing and complementary items to choose from. I think everyone can relate to this firsthand. When you go to a grocery store, for example, it's nice to kind of have different brands to choose from, or different flavors. Like maybe if you're choosing ice cream, it's good to have different brands, because different brands textures might vary, but depending on the recipes of the companies. And maybe it's just nice to have a difference between chocolate or strawberry or vanilla. So just different flavors. So variety is always nice. Level of customer service expected. Channel members must provide consistent customer service before, during, and after the sale. This is nothing new here. We know that we've always mentioned throughout this class that the a sale actually is not really ever completed. Really, it's because you're always trying to go beyond that, because you want that repeat revenue. You want the repeat customers and the word of mouth. You want to go over and beyond, not just before and during the sale, but also after the sale. Market coverage. This requires the entrepreneur to understand distribution density. There's going to be 3 degrees of distribution density that exist. The intensive distribution, selective distribution, and inclusive or exclusive distribution. Intensive distribution is where the entrepreneur is attempting to achieve broad access to customers and full physical market coverage. So obviously here we're trying to just mass distribute our product here. We're going to be intense about it. We want to make the product or service widely available to all target customers when and where they want it. So a great example of this is your necessities, your essentials, such as like your milk and your snacks, your fast food, soft drinks, because we know everyone has to eat, right? It's not that they just want to eat; it's they have to survive. So we know these things are gonna be being purchased a lot by people. People have different eating schedules, different eating habits, so it's going to be constantly being consumed. So we want to be able to make these available wherever you're at. You can see this from the displays right by your checkouts with the impulse buys. It's usually in the form of snacks or maybe magazines, just something for a quick pastime, or something for just a little quick snack or some gum or something. So that's a way how they're just trying to intensely distribute it, even to the point where you've already made your mind up within the store of what you actually came there to buy. They're still trying to get you at that last moment on that impulse buy, just by seeing it at the last moment. There's going to be some benefits and drawbacks to this intensive distribution method. The benefits are going to be high level of total sales. Obviously, can be achieved through this type of intensive distribution. Obviously, because the more pretty much an example like fishing, the more nets you have in the sea, the better chance of a larger yield of fish that you're going to catch. Same thing holds true here. The more products you have out there in the market, the better chance that people are going to consume those products or purchase those products. The drawbacks are going to be that it gives up a degree of channel control. So obviously you're giving up a degree of channel control. If you have a lot of stuff out there, it's harder to manage things than it is to manage just a couple of them. It reduces per unit profit due to increased channel expenses. Obviously, if it's harder to maintain, it's going to be more expensive to maintain, because you're going to need more managers maintaining it, more staff, more employees, so on and so forth. You get the picture here. Selective distribution, obviously, the entrepreneur is going to limit distribution to a select group of channel members in specific market areas. So good examples here is like Rolex, your expensive watches is obviously going to be tailored towards the upper class, upper society, people that can afford it, that have more disposable income. Ping golf clubs is another example. That's an upper end quality golf club for people that golf a lot, preferably your professional people, and once again your upper society, your upper threshold. And most shopping goods. Benefits and drawbacks here once as well. Some of the benefits is more channel control and reasonable sales volume and profits. Drawbacks is less access and coverage. Obviously, if you're selective about your distribution, as opposed to being intense about it, then obviously you're going to have less access and coverage. But like it says, the reasonable sales volume and profits, so easier to maintain, but still have reasonable sales and profits. So you can still have a good life here, run a good business, and like it says, maintain a good portion of control too. Okay, exclusive distribution is the last one we're going to look at here. The extreme opposite of intensive distribution, obviously, if we're exclusive about it. We're going to limit the number of channel members. This is intended to create prestige and gain strong channel support. Some good examples here is designer clothing, expensive fragrances, and luxury electronics. So obviously, those are going to be exclusively distributed. Benefits is going to be a high degree of control and a high per unit profit. So obviously, if anything is going to be exclusive, then it's going to be a high markup, and you're going to have a lot of control of it because it's a valuable asset. So you're not going to want to take a chance of actually misplacing it, and or it being stolen. Next is cost efficiency and profitability. Channel cost is a major factor of profitability. Obviously, the higher something's cost, then the more difficult you're going to have of getting that gross profit and being competitive at the same time. And the more something costs, the more it's going to cut into that gross profit. Some costs are going to include distribution costs. So once again, how are you going to distribute it? Are you going to have those fleets of vehicles? Are you going to pay your standard shipping companies or your common carriers to do it? How are you going to advertise it? Are you going to have an online advertising platform? Are you going to, for example, pay Facebook to run advertisements on there? You can pay Google to advertise on there, and YouTube, stuff of that sort. Some other selling expenses is, are you going to have an actual selling workforce or a selling crew? Sales department, then you're going to have commission, selling expense, some stuff you have to consider here for these costs that are going to be included. You have to consider if you will be better off profit-wise using channel members versus going it alone using direct channels. So once again, as we said, there's both benefits, there's both benefits and obviously negative aspects and obligations. I guess you could say benefits and obligations that have to be assumed with each different option here. Sorry, I got twisted here. Adaptability. Obviously, anything we want to do needs to be adaptable to change, because as we know in the business environment, it's forever changing and always will be. That's one thing that's constant in business is change. So it's a lot like life. It's always going to be constant in life. One thing constant in life is change, that's for sure. And like I said, it holds true to business, which makes sense because really business is interacting with individuals. So it makes sense why it's constantly changing, because there's just so many external factors that tie into it, like regulations and so on and so forth. So just anything we do needs to be adaptable to be able to adjust to those changes. Obviously, given the fast-changing market conditions, you must choose a strategy that allows for enough flexibility to respond to those changes. We need to think about the changes that happened when electronic channels opened. So just think about how much commerce changed once these electronic channels were available. Whether the strategy can handle the addition of new products and services you may wish to roll out in the future. So once again, you might enter different industries or different segments. So you are just try to look for more of a niche market stuff of it, whatever it might be. You just want to make sure that you're going to be able to adapt to be able to do so. There are going to be 3 channel design imperatives. First thing you want to do is make sure that you design your channel from the market back. So what that means is that we need to focus on the needs of your target customer and allow that to help you select channel design. So just think about the needs of the customer. When once again, this is nothing new here. We've been thinking about the voice of the consumer, voice of the customer this whole time, from the beginning of our ideas. We want to try to leverage your channel strategy as a competitive advantage. So this means we want to create and deliver superior customer value or find a way to lock out potential competitors. So once again, we've discussed previously in this course different aspects or different ways of gaining a competitive advantage. You can either do something at a quicker rate, more efficiently. You can do it maybe cheaper, just whatever it might be. Use channel innovation strategies. So constantly think about the best way to reach your customers. Generation Y, I believe now is the largest part of the portion of the base of the customers or percentage of the base of the overall customer base. So obviously different generations, Generation X, Y. The millennials, every generation is different because they're different age, different, with different generations come different fads, different trends. So every generation is different. So you need to think about different channels and be innovative on how you're going to reach those different generations. Electronic channels, social media. Obviously, we've discussed on the importance of having a strong social media presence and making sure that we're staying up to date on all these electronic channels and social medias. Formalized channel arrangements. So we can have vertical marketing systems. This is going to be the formalized channel arrangement. This is going to be where professionally managed and centrally coordinated channels designed to achieve channel economies and marketing impact. We have two basic types here. We have the corporate type and the contractual type. Corporate vertical marketing system is going to be a successive stages of production and distribution that's controlled by one single owner. We can either have a forward integration or a backward integration. In the case of a forward integration, this is where a manufacturer runs a retail shop. So, for example, maybe let's say we have a retail shop. So let's say, for example, maybe 84 Lumber. I don't know. This is just using them as an example. I'm not saying this is how they operate because I have no idea how they operate. Just an example, just because the name Lumber's in there. But say 84 Lumber's actually owned by a manufacturer who actually goes out and I wouldn't be a manufacturer in that case. They would actually strip the trees from the side of a mountain or on a plot of land, and then actually manufacture the lumber. So I guess that they from the raw material, raw lumber, they manufacture the boards that they would ultimately sell at the store. So then in this case, that's where the manufacturer would actually own that store. So that's the forward integration. The backward integration is where the retailer owns a manufacturing operation. So just the inverse relationship of that of the forward integration. You're just the retailer actually owns the manufacturing operation. Contractual vertical marketing system. This is where the independent production and distribution companies are going to integrate their efforts on a contractual basis to obtain greater functional economies and increased marketing impact than they could achieve alone. So here they're just kind of going to combine their resources here and try to for the economies of scale here and try to obtain something that they couldn't within their own power. So just obviously. One is or two is greater than one, three is greater than two. So obviously, with the more help you have, the more you can get, the more you can be productive. With many hands make light work is a saying that a lot of people like to use. So obviously, contractual vertical marketing system is something that we're familiar with seeing. There's going to be three variations of the contractual vertical marketing system. You have the wholesale sponsored systems, whereas the wholesaler contracts with retailer to standardize and coordinate buying, merchandising, and inventory. Then you'll have the retail sponsored systems, where you'll have the small independent retailers for an organization that actually operates a wholesale facility cooperatively. And then lastly, franchising. Everyone's familiar with franchising. For example, a guy I grew up with, he's a franchisee of the Pita Pit. Can't think of the name of the restaurant, but Pita Pit. So we know how the franchising thing works there. Supply chain management, SCM. I think everyone's probably heard of what supply chain management is by this point through business school. But this is the planning and management of all activities involved in sourcing, procurement, conversion, and all logistics management activities. So obviously, once again from the very beginning to the very end, so the management of all these activities involved from how are we gonna get the money to go about getting the product, the goods, the services, whatever it might be. How are we gonna manage it while we have them on the shelf or while we're servicing it, and ultimately to the transaction to servicing it after the transaction. So the whole process here, coordination and collaboration with channel partners. So obviously um, throughout this process, we need to make sure that we're coordinating our inventory levels with that of our distributors. So we want to make sure that our distributor has a product that we're promising to our customers, to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Because if there's no uniformity there and everyone's not on the same page, then obviously there's going to be a hiccup there. Someone might, there's just going to be a hiccup in the supply and demand there. So the main thing is to keep it in equilibrium there, keep everyone on the same page. So once again, this is a sophisticated process here that comes into play here. Once again, it integrates supply and demand management. So once again, your goal is to keep that supply and demand in equilibrium, to make sure that the market is functioning as efficiently as possible. It's going to link major business functions and business processes within the company and across companies. Obviously, if you're coordinating your inventory level with that of a supplier, um, then obviously that you're coordinating these processes within the company and across other companies. So everyone has to be on the same page because everyone's intertwined here. So everyone needs to understand that this is a very important process here. Um, Includes manufacturing processes and all logistics. Logistics management. This is going to be the planning, implementation, and the control of the efficient, effective forward and reverse flow and storage of goods, services, related information between the point of origin and the point of consumption to meet the customer needs. So logistics management, obviously, I think the name pretty much tells it, but that's the actual the the definition there. I just read out for you. I'm sure everyone could have done it on their own, but there you have it. Um, the activities that are included within the logistics management, just some of them here. We'll get through some of them, and you can just read through the rest on your own time. But we'll have inbound and outbound transportation management, fleet management. So once again, if you have a fleet of vehicles, you have to make sure they're managed and serviced up to a certain level to make sure that they're safe for your employees, and make sure that they're dependable. So therefore, that make sure that the goods and services can actually be delivered in a timely process, in the most obviously cost efficient manner as well. So fleet management, warehousing, obviously, warehousing. We're concerned with warehousing tangible goods here, so we want to make sure that we're managing it at an appropriate level and in appropriate condition. Um, Materials handling, order fulfillment. So we get the point here. Inventory management. So to compete in the global marketplace, you must create and implement a supply chain management program. I think this makes sense here because if you're not in the loop here, then you're going to be left behind, because in today's business environment, everything is intertwined with one another. That's just the way that the financial markets work. It's just the way just the environment we operate in. So we just have to have a supply chain management, an effective supply chain management implemented into our operations, or we're just not going to be able to take it to the global marketplace. High performing ventures that use supply chain management did better in customer facing performance, internal facing performance, market performance, and financial performance, which makes sense because if you have access to these different parts of the supply chain and good relations with them, then chances are you're going to get better deals and obviously be more dependable to your customer as well. So in turn, they're going to be willing to be faithful to you. So you're getting that repeat revenue. So you get the point here. It's just a revolving picture here. It all comes around. In order to construct a supply chain management program, you must understand your customer, understand the supply chain and align the supply chain with your marketing strategy. So I think everyone can see here the importance of the supply chain management. Obviously, like I said before, it's going to ultimately allow your company to grow at the level at which you would ultimately want it to be at. That's going to wrap up the material for chapter 9 here. If anyone has any questions or concerns about it, or anything's confusing about anything that we've covered is confusing, please just let me know. I'm available. Just reach out to me on email. Just once again, try to give me about a day to respond, about 24 hours, a little longer than on the weekend. And as always, I'm available during my office hours that's listed on the syllabus. But once again, just let's look back here one more time. The entrepreneurial exercise for chapter 9 is going to be due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So make sure you get that in. Any questions on that, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you. And once again, be on the lookout for chapter 10 lecture as well, so we get caught up. Because like I said, my goal is to be able to leave the week before the course projects due open to you all, just to allow you all to work on nothing but that entrepreneurial marketing plan that was assigned to you at the beginning of the course. So that's all I have for everyone. I hope everyone has a good day. Everyone stay safe out there, and be on the lookout for the next lecture. And once again, I'm available if anyone needs me. Everyone have a good day. Thank you.